That's the squirrel. Let's start. Welcome to the Alpha Rejects. I'm Geronimo, and today I am joined together with Alfarius.
Alfarius.
Yes. And today we're going to be talking about Dark Angels.
Archangels, dark angels, will you be mine? I want to kiss you and hold you all the
Why?
time. Oh, sorry.
Is that an actual song?
There's some song in the 50s about like Teen Angel or something like that. I don't know.
Oh.
Remember, I'm old. That's what happens.
Who sings that?
Well, I sang that version a second ago. I don't know who did the real one.
Oh, okay.
Lol.
Yeah.
So, everyone excited about Dark Angels?
Absolutely.
Since they have
I
a
have
lot of
more.
lore.
I have many questions and not a lot of answers, so I hope you guys can help enlighten me.
All right, let's jump into it then.
Cool. With that, I'm going to choose Lysander to go first.
All right.
Is
Good
the
evening,
lore
ladies.
nerd.
To start, we're gonna have to go way back before the Imperium was even founded. We're gonna have to go back to the Unification Wars on Terra.
Da-da.
In the book Valdor, Birth of the Imperium, we get our first glimpse of the new Astartes towards the end of the book when the remnants of the Thunder Warriors and their allies came to confront the Emperor for destroying most of the Thunder Warriors in a one fell swoop. One of the Primarchs, because that's what they called their generals, the Thunder Warriors. I forget his name, but he's like, "You have no army," and then Valdor is like, "Oh, I don't," and then the mountain behind him, you just see all these red eye lenses just start appearing out of the darkness, and then the battle began. Like it was a very eerie scene in the book. They did a very good job doing it, but we're going to be able to use a couple different stories to explore the Dark Angels here. So this was the Dark Angels' first engagement was on the slopes of the Himalayan mountains at the end of that book, and you could tell they were learning as they were fighting, and I think that's one of the best things about the Dark Angels is their adaptability. They're a jack of all trades, master of none type legion. So they're pretty good at everything that they do, and I think that's what makes them probably one of my favorite loyalist legions. Is they can just do everything. They can do shock. They can do stealth. They can even do espionage if they wanted to. They're good at it. We've seen that with the modern Dark Angels hunting down the Fallen. They're very sneaky about it. And then after the formation of the Imperium and the launch of the Great Crusade, part of the Great Crusade wasn't just to unify all of humanity under one throne. It was also to find the Primarchs, and we'll get to that in a minute.
Yes.
But that was the first time we got to see the Dark Angels in combat. Was on the slope of the Himalayan mountains when they pretty much annihilated the remnants of the Thunder Warriors, and they did a very good job doing it. Even though the Thunder Warriors were technically bigger and stronger, but they didn't have the same mental acumen that an Astartes has. Astartes are smart. I think that's what really separates them, and they don't have any of the degenerative DNA defects that the Thunder Warriors had.
Yeah.
Until they put nails in the head.
Yes, but we're talking about Dark Angels. We're not talking about World Eaters today.
Yes.
And I got a quick question that actually leads to my first question. A lot of the legions, the legions at the time, they changed they had a different name before they were reunited with their Primarch. Did the Dark Angels have a different name before they were reunited with the Primarch, or were they just Dark Angels from the beginning?
Dude, I'd have to look that up real quick. I don't remember because I know like the World Eaters weren't the World Eaters like the Dusk Raiders before.
Yeah.
Wait, no.
And then
Dusk Raiders were the.
It was the Death Guard
Yes.
before.
Death Guard. That's right. Garo was a Dusk Raider, correct?
Right. And who were the Warhounds? Was that Horus's legion before?
Oh, the Warhounds were. I thought the Warhounds were. They were either World Eaters or Blood Angels.
Okay.
I think the Warhounds were the Horus.
Mm-hmm.
Then they were no, yeah, you're right. That was World Eaters because this Luna Wolves was the Horus.
Right. Which is a pretty boss name. It's a pretty good. It's a cool name to give up.
I think the Dark Angels.
They were just known as the first.
Yeah.
The first Legion.
All right.
Because they grew that reputation growing through the Unification Wars, and they just kept it. They're the Angels of the Emperor. That's how it all started.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
And then the dark part came from the armor.
Yep. Their color scheme during the Heresy is by far my favorite. The whole red, black, and white. Oh.
It was dark green, but it became black at night, right?
No, it was always black. That's why. And then after the Horus Heresy and the destruction of Caliban, in honor of Caliban, they adopted green, the dark green.
Okay.
But there are still some of well, not their chapters, but I'm trying to remember some of their wings actually still has black.
Yeah, the Raven Wing.
Yep,
is black, and then the Death Wing is like that bone color.
Yeah, the Death Wing is bone white.
That's yep.
And they are all primarily Terminators. Mostly.
And I think they were one of the first legions to be given Terminator armor.
Yep.
In fact, that's another thing we can get into too is like the Emperor trusted the Dark Angels with weaponry that no other legion had. Them and the Iron Hands definitely had some pretty incredible weaponry throughout the Unification War, not the Unification Wars, but the Great Crusade. Like, what was the big one that the Dark Angels had? The Plasma Flamers? Oof.
Like the Phosphite?
Yeah.
Yeah, the descriptions of those Phosphite weapons are absolutely terrifying.
And what are the descriptions, if you don't mind me asking?
Think of like plasma, like being able to be controlled out of a flamethrower nozzle.
Oh, hell no.
And they were so destructive. I'm sorry, not Phosphite, Phosphex.
Phosphex, that's correct.
Yeah, the Phosphex incinerators. It was like fire that burned on a molecular level, and it was corrosive and toxic at the same time. I mean, it just destroyed things on so many levels, but it also almost inevitably destroyed the wielders. After prolonged use as well.
Yep.
Didn't they add the pistol in the Space Marine too?
No, it's a Volkite pistol.
Oh, okay, wrong one.
Yeah. Is that the Ghostbuster pistol that people have talked about?
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to get it. So
Yeah, neither have I. I've been working on getting my Las Fusel in Space Marine 2, and I just got it a few days ago.
Nice.
anyways, back. Sorry.
You're good.
And so, along with unification, they end up finding their Primarch.
Yep, on the planet of Caliban, which was a death world.
Yep.
Had a very knightly medieval theme to it. There was a lot. Caliban had some connections to the warp, and that's why the beasts on Caliban were so dangerous. It was considered a death world before Lionel Johnson hunted down all the beasts on it. He raised himself in the woods for a long time, and then he was eventually founded by his father figure Luther, who we will get into later. And he raised him to be essentially a knight. And as he grew up, he got bigger and bigger, and really, really quickly. And Luther knew there was something different about this young man very fast. He eventually became their de facto leader of Caliban after he united Caliban and rid it of all the warp creatures and monsters. And then shortly after, the Big E shows up, takes him under his wing, gives him his legion. He turns a lot of his knights into Astartes, but Luther was too old to go through the entire process of becoming an Astartes because he was just too old. And this always rubbed Luther the wrong way, but he was a very prominent commander within the Dark Angels, and they were involved in a lot of nasty campaigns through the Great Crusade, which I think that's a good starting point if anyone wants to take over for the Great Crusade.
I have a couple of questions, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we know about the great beasts of Caliban being like this. Well, you know, the reason that Caliban was a death world and the origin of this knightly order that Luther and Lionel Johnson were part of. Do we ever get many details on exactly what these great beasts were like? Because it seems like everything I encounter just kind of says, "Oh, they're great beasts," and I'm like, "Well, what are they?"
Well,
I know that they're warp tainted, but just no real details beyond that.
They varied, just from what I'm reading, but you're right. We don't have any like perfect descriptions. I bet if we read the Horus Heresy Lionel book, we might get a bit of illumination. But I've only read a few of the Dark Angels books from the Heresy, and they were kind of meh. They weren't as good as a lot of the other Horus Heresy books. And I haven't read all the Primarch books yet, but I did read Son of the Forest. But we're not going that far today. We're just going to go to the end of the Horus Heresy.
Right.
We are skimming over a few things like the first Rangdad genocide, their decline. Yeah.
Right. And then that also leads to my other question is, so it's accepted that these were warp tainted creatures. What was the source of the warp taint on the planet Caliban? I mean, what is it?
Dude, that's a mystery.
Okay.
That is a mystery. And when we talk about, maybe in the next podcast, when we talk about the Dark Angels in the modern era and the return of Lionel Johnson, because there is some weird stuff going on Caliban. And we think when we get to that later in the podcast, when Luther turns, to
Spoiler for anyone who didn't know, Luther turns. Just
yeah. When Luther turns, they think it's because of some of the chaos influence on the entire planet,
mm,
and then that's also why the Rock survived the destruction of Caliban.
because it wasn't tainted, or
and maybe it still is. Maybe there's some Xenos warp controlling factors within the rock that allowed it to survive the breaking of Caliban, as they call it.
mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of mystery there for sure. There's a lot of mystery.
Okay. Well, this is where I'm going to insert. This is where I'm going to insert headcanon, and that Caliban was populated by Skaven, and they used warpstone to with Clan Molder in order to make the great beasts. So that's now my canon. All right,
That's your head
you
canon.
continue.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. Squirrel button.
Yeah,
Squirrel
pretty
button.
much. God, that's loud. That is so loud.
That is the revenge of Pete right there.
So,
But I'm gonna let y'all have a little bit of food for thought.
Okay, here we go.
The Watchers of the Dark.
Uh-huh.
Or the Watchers in the Dark.
Dude, I have no idea what the Watchers in the Dark are. They are so mysterious.
no one knows.
That was my next question.
Like,
Well, do you think
they're fascinating because, like, they obviously are for. I'm going to sound like a Taoist, but for the greater good of the Dark Angels, because why else would they serve the Dark Angels the way that they do, and why do they serve Lionel Johnson the way they do? Like, when we get to it, like, they even sort of saved his life in the book Lion, Son of the Forest.
Yep.
Right.
Well, do you think that the reason why that Caliban was so warp tainted was because there's a pocket or a portal of where the Watchers in the Dark originated from?
Possibly, man. That is, I mean,
Because
your theory is as good as mine.
Because how mysterious the Watchers in the Dark are, even the Changer of Ways was so freaked out by this thing when he ran across it while screwing with the Dark Angels on their ship.
Right.
Or on the rock.
It's the demon is a very powerful one from Zeech.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also important to note that the Watchers have demonstrated a remarkable ability to resist the warp. And it seems to be on the level of, like, pariahs who are able to nullify the warp completely around them. And so maybe Caliban was, by its nature, a much more warp-infested world, but the presence of the Watchers was keeping it in check, the way that, I don't know, like Noctilith, the Blackstone, was planted by the Necrons in order to stake down the warp in some places. Maybe they could even be the result of oh my gosh, what are their names?
Blanks?
Well, no, heavens, the Slan. No, not the Slan. Ones that the ones that the Necrons fought in the War in Heaven.
It's the old ones, I think that's what it's called.
Old ones, yeah, just the old ones. I'm sorry. The old ones were always creating biological races to fit these niches. So maybe they were a biological old one creation that kind of had the same effect as the Blackstone did. And they were created for that purpose. And
I don't think so.
It's just a possibility. Sure.
So, just based from the wiki, they the Watchers in the Dark appeared to oppose chaos and the powers of the warp, and seemed on some level to be attempting to limit or contain the power of Caliban's warp-tainted great beasts. So with that, they probably are a stunted. They're pariahs essentially. They're possibly
Mhm.
kind of like Beckwin in the Eisenhorn series. She's able to
Right.
nullify warp effects, which is going to what you were saying earlier. Maybe they are nulls or blanks, as we call them.
Right.
I know why.
Oh yeah. Oh, dude, I'd love to hear it.
Well, not about the
Spill.
Watchers, but about why there's, weird beasts on Caliban.
Well, let's
Okay,
hear it.
spill the tea. Spill the
So,
tea.
it's believed that they're mutated by the touch of chaos from the birth of Slanesh
Okay.
due to its proximity near to our Terra.
Oh, so what you're saying is they are cosmic STDs.
Yes.
Perfect. Makes perfect, absolutely truth.
So
right.
that's why they're all mutated, is believed. As for the Watchers, I have no idea.
Well, the birth of
They're-
Slanesh screwed up a lot of crap.
Right.
Right.
Like during the age of the dark age of technology, when the birth of Slanesh happened, it drove a lot of humans that were warp sensitive insane, and that's why a lot of these backwater worlds are so scared of witches.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they had to kill them all during that same time period during Slanesh's birth. Her birth scream basically awoken a bunch of people's warp capabilities during that time, and they had to kill a lot of people.
Yeah,
they
because
could either control it or they couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. They essentially became like living gateways for demons to come through.
Well, that's essentially what a psyker is they're a gateway to the warp, and it's what they do with it and how they're trained and whether or not they can control it or not, because that's how I view psychers, is they are a conduit between our reality and the reality of the warp.
Right.
I just picture Blair Witch Trials.
Oh yeah, they literally did. They were burning people at the stake.
Oh, fireworks.
All right, so Big E finds Lionel Johnson. Let's move on to the Great Crusade. We talked about Caliban for like 10 minutes.
Well,
There's a lot of
Caliban's,
mysteries to it we need to solve.
Yeah,
And
it's
what's
an
that?
interesting world. Caliban is an interesting world.
It is.
So spy.
See,
What do you think about... Shoot, what was the next battle? Oh yeah, the second and third Rangdan Xenocides.
see, I'm not too familiar with the Rangdan Xenocide. All I remember, like, it's been a couple weeks, and my life has been very, very hectic. So I haven't had a chance to let a lot of that stuff sink in. From what I remember, a lot of Dark Angels just got murked during that, and they were using everything at their disposal to try and stop the Rangdan.
And
So
yeah, well, I think a book that we've all either read or talked about explored the Rangdan Xenocides a little bit unexpectedly, and that was the Alfarius Primarch book.
yeah.
Yes.
When
Dude finally went and met the lion.
Yeah.
Well, not met.
Well, they did meet the lion, and
But it wasn't personally him.
Alfarius meets the lion, and they decide to help out the Dark Angels, finish off the Rangdan, but it was a feint for them to go look for Omegon.
Yep.
But the planets that these wars took place on, they were absolutely devastated, and the Rangdan are some nasty creatures. And I looked up some fan art, and they all sort of differ a little bit, but it's we know that the Rangdan were very what's the word?
Advanced.
They were advanced, absolutely cruel, hard as hell to kill, and they had psyker capability. They were good at everything.
Yeah, they really, and not only that, but it's very interesting to look at the kind of the parallels between the Rangdan and even the Alpha Legion, the way they work, because the Rangdan, their mimicry abilities, they also made use of. So, they would use all of these slave warriors to fight for them, either through like mind control or through intimidation, things like that. But they would also use a lot of deception and wear down their opponents until that right moment that it was time for them to actually strike with their forces, their actual troops, who by then not only had, amazing technology and were supposed to be really strong and really smart. I mean, more than a match for Space Marines. But here they had used these very advanced tactics to craft the moment to be, exactly what they wanted to. And it makes me wonder how many lessons Alfarius and Omegon took from that campaign and reinvested into the Alpha Legion based on this, seeing how brutal that these conflicts were to the Space Marines, with like 80,000 Space Marines get killed and who knows how many millions of irregular Imperial troops. So they probably used those as a learning opportunity to develop some of the same tactics that they would be using in the future.
Yeah, just looking at the wiki, 9 Space Marine legions were involved in the Rangdan Xenocides, but the Dark Angels were the primary.
And it wasn't their first time either. Dark Angels fought them before, and they're still having trouble. Having experience fighting them.
Yeah, they just look terrifying from the fan art.
Just keep coming back.
Imagine if they came back in the modern era. That'd be interesting.
What the hell was called?
Say again?
What are those worms called again?
The sloth?
The sloth. They're still around, aren't they?
Yes.
Is it the sloth or the slot?
Sloth.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was they after a battle is over, they would go and eat the dead and stuff and mind control people.
Mm-hmm. That didn't help at all.
They're like, to me, they look like a collection of worms that form one massive body.
Like the worms that walk.
Yes.
Yeah, they're terrifying.
Yeah.
The Carrion Masters, the Maggot Men, the Dream Eaters.
Crazy thing is they have advanced technology too.
Yep, they're warp capable.
Yeah. They're very Lovecraftian in their appearance and their description.
Mm-hmm.
even like all the tentacles in their ships and stuff like that. Honestly, this could be one of those. And forgive me, brothers, for speaking heresy here. But they feel a lot like the mind flayers from Dungeons and Dragons, and maybe there's a little bit of a
crossover
appropriation there, or a deliberate nod.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
GW copying something? No.
No. Well, you remember GW started off as a company like one of the British publishers for D&D content back in the day, so you got started somewhere.
Yep.
Well, it sounds like some of the sloth actually worked for and with the Rangda.
That would make sense. While they would advance ahead, Sloth would come up behind, clean things up, make sure everything's good.
Yeah, and enslave whoever.
That too.
Mm-hmm.
Ugh.
Ugly
They're gross,
things.
man. Gross. Yeah.
But after that, everything was working out, right?
Yeah,
It's just
like after the Rangda Xenocides, the Dark Angels were absolutely decimated, and they pretty much had to rebuild afterwards. And because I read something that they got down to like 10,000 legionnaires at one point.
Makes sense.
Does that number ring a bell to anyone?
Not to me.
Yeah, not that specific number, but I do know that they were really decimated, that they had to go back and rebuild. So.
Yeah, I knew it was something atrocious, and they had to go back to Caliban and rebuild the Legion, and
Some drama happened, and Luther wasn't happy.
Oh, that's it. This is before the heresy even happened.
Yes.
Yep.
The Luther thing happened after the heresy.
All the drama?
Yeah, the breaking of Caliban happened after.
No, I'm talking about how having him stay back on Caliban to, make more soldiers. He wasn't happy with that.
Oh, yeah. He was not happy about that.
And see, that's where I think that, this, I wonder if specifically Zinch played a big part in this to plant that seed into Luther, because, or maybe it was just bad communication on the part of Lionel, but just going and saying to Luther and saying, you are the one I trust. You raised me, so I know that you could raise this next generation that we need and raise them right because you raised me. And I think if that had been communicated effectively, that maybe Luther wouldn't have had his issue. So I don't know if he was already, if the seed had already been planted, or if Lionel just didn't communicate effectively for Luther to understand the honor and the trust that was being put in him to rebuild the Legion.
Yeah, I think the Lion was just he's not really into showing emotions unless it's straight up fury.
Right.
And
Well, the thing is with Lion, I'm sorry to cut you off, but so prime example, like with Rebute Gilliman and a lot of the other Primarchs, except for some of the ones that were the traitor Primarchs and some of them that had really sucky, essentially childhood. Lionel Johnson was not raised by anybody until he was in his teenage years,
right?
Because he spent so many years out in the forest killing the warp-touched creatures, and Luther didn't exactly see him as a son, So
Okay,
he never
okay.
really developed the communication skills and expects everybody to know what he's thinking at all times. I honestly also think that he might have a little bit of autism. I mean, everybody jokes about it, but looking at his mannerisms and how I interact with people with autism all the time,
Right.
reading about how he acts is exactly how a lot of the people with autism react and how they act. So I think that that's the reason why he's the way that he is.
Mm-hmm.
It's because, number one, he doesn't have any social skills, and number two,
Mm-hmm.
he might have autism. But
Maybe.
that's
I think
just
that's
me
real.
pulling it out of my butt.
I think that's really good analysis. I could see, Lionel just saying, "Okay, Luther, go take care of this," and turning away, just expecting it to be done, and not understanding that the human need to communicate effectively. And I think you explained that on multiple levels really well.
Yeah, so
I wonder where I've heard that before. Picture of the Emperor slowly come up behind us.
Well, the sins of the father, as they say.
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I could see Lionel just instead of talking, just staring at people a lot and walking away. So
Yeah, well, kind of like Rogel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Rogel does have a little bit of emotional intelligence. I think the reason why the lion, first of all, just like Spy was saying, is like he was never taught any emotional intelligence, and he just thinks everything if it's logical, that's not needs to be done. He doesn't care about the human condition or the need of being told, "Oh, you did a good job."
Mhm.
Lion doesn't do that. I think he does now in the modern era because he realizes all of his faults. And
Actually,
go ahead.
I'll wait.
Go ahead.
Because he thinks in everything logically, tactically. There's no wasted breath on telling someone, "Hey, you did a good job." Lion doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
He just does everything logically and tactically, and there's no room for emotions in his mind. And I think that's one of the probably one of the big reasons why, like what you guys were saying earlier, like instead of telling Luther, "Hey, I'm leaving you here to train up this next generation. This is a great honor. I need you to do this. It's not that you're a bad warrior, blah, 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 blah." But he didn't do that because he didn't think it was needed.
Right.
That's it.
Well, I feel like, so obviously GW authors sometimes don't talk to each other, I swear. But
Mhm.
with Mike Brooks writing the newest Lion book, and it's seeming like, yes, he's starting to understand and get what people are sitting there saying, and knowing, okay, I have to explain my actions instead of just saying, "Hey, go do this thing," and not telling them the reason behind it. I'm just hoping that, because I haven't read the new Dark Angels Codex or Omnibus. I need whenever I finally get my hands on it, seeing if they might have kept that character trait now, or have completely abandoned it.
I think they probably abandoned it because he's like how many of you guys read the new Lion book?
Oh, I read it 3 times already. Well, listened to it 3 times. It's so good.
I haven't.
It's one of my favorite books. I've probably read it the same amount of times.
Yeah.
Which one is that?
Lion Son
Son of the Forest.
Okay, Lion, Son of the Forest. Okay.
Yeah, he's like, he realizes all of his faults, and he talks about it a lot throughout the book. I screwed up here, I screwed up there. I haven't been a good
Oh,
judge of
wow.
character. Like, I'm not going to make these same mistakes again. And like, he has a real beef with Rabute Gilliman dating back to the Horus Heresy and the Great
Right.
Crusade. Like, he has a huge beef with him.
Right.
And at the end of the book, when he finds out from Dante that Rabute is alive and leading the Indominus Crusade, he's like, it's like he has this huge weight lifted on him, and the last words of the book are, "I'm not alone." It's like he's accepting that things can be done different. And
It's cool.
like,
See, now you totally got me wanting to read it. Yeah.
Well, he shows such a drastic amount of character development from the beginning of the book to the end of the book. It's enormous.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And I'm just hoping that they continue to build off that instead of just going, I'm lazy. We're not going to do that.
No. They're totally doing it. Like,
yeah, and I'm hoping that they continue to do that instead of just saying, I'm lazy. Let's scrap that idea.
Oh no. They're definitely going on. But they're abandoning the old fucking lion that's just a dick and does everything his way or the highway attitude.
Yeah, which I'm glad that they are, because
he was insufferable.
Heresy lion, I was like, screw that guy.
He was insufferable.
But the new lion I love. Yeah. He is one of the reasons why, like, if I ever start, like, I'm putting together a list of all the stuff I want for Space Marines, is he will be my next army.
That's really cool. Man, you really got me wanting to read this book, because I love any sort of redemption arc.
It is so good.
That's awesome. I love that.
Speaking of the old Primarch, we gotta talk about the heresy.
Yep. So, all right, I'll take those reins. So after Isfan, or even before the events of Isfan 3 and 5.
Wait, sorry. Let me put a pause. Just a real quick question here. Did Horus make even any sort of bid for Lionel?
No.
Or do you think he was just like, nope, this dude is incorruptible. He just can't be touched?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's going to go with, that's perfect to go in it. So he sent the legions that he feared the most so far away. He sent Rabute way far away from him. Like, he sent the Ultramarines as far away from him as he could. He did the same thing with Lionel Johnson. He did the same thing to an extent with Sanguinius. And then eventually led Sanguinius into a trap that Sanguinius escaped. But he sent the Dark Angels on some campaign way, way far away that communications would have taken months to get to him after the events of Isfan 3 and 5. So, and then as the events, right after the events of Isfan 5 took place, Horus gets together with Conrad Kurz and is like, all right, I need you to go keep the Dark Angels busy, because the Dark Angels are recently rebuilt, still not to the same numbers that they were before, because they were nearly 200,000 Astartes before the Rangdan genocides. And then by the time of the Horus Heresy, I think the Dark Angels were about 70,000 ish that were actually on Crusade, and he had another 20,000 back on Caliban. So this leads into the Thramis Crusade.
Dun dun.
And the Thramis Crusade was brutal. The Night Lords knew they couldn't tactically take on the Dark Angels toe to toe. So they did a lot of hit and run tactics, and they won a lot of small battles. But every major battle that the Night Lords took on and actually did, peer-to-peer combat with, they lost. So they kept doing the hit and run guerrilla tactics. And this lasted for 3 years. So he kept Lionel out of the fight for 3 years.
I mean, it kind of makes sense that they would do hit and runs because the Night Lords were not frontal assaults. We're going to hit you and keep hitting you. They're more, all right, I'm going to set up a fake target. You're going to attack it, think that you won, and then I'm going to shank you in your sleep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's essentially how they tried to fight the war. There was a lot of cool interactions between Lionel and Conrad, and Conrad and Lionel are they're in my top 4 for greatest duelists of all the Primarchs. I think Lionel's by far number 1. Heresy era Lionel's by far the number 1 best duelist, but Conrad had him beat during one interaction, and the only reason that he survived, because right as Conrad was getting ready to give him his death blow, his first captain came up and shanked Conrad right in the back with a sword, and that was the only reason Lionel survived.
You think Lionel was holding back in the fight the way the Emperor was like holding back from Horus when they first met?
Hell no.
I doubt it.
No.
Hell no.
Okay.
Not at all. No, not a chance. He hated Kurz.
Sure.
He always hated Kurz.
Everyone hates Kurz.
I don't even like Kurz. And I'm a
Well,
Night
and
One
fan.
Primarch that actually kind of liked him. I can't remember which one it was.
Fulgrim.
Yeah.
Fulgrim liked him, and Horus liked him.
Yeah.
But mostly Fulgrim.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
right, and I could see when Horus went up to Kurz and said, "Hey, I've got this idea," and Kurz is just like, "Finally, yeah, I'm in." It doesn't even let him finish the sentence.
Oh yeah, because after Conrad destroyed his homeworld of Nostromo, trying to purify his legion, but the taint was already there.
Mm-hmm.
He was already being censured,
Mm-hmm.
and that's when he got with Horus and Horus like, yeah, we're gonna rebel, and Conrad's like, I'm in. Screw this. This is not what I signed up for. And
I mean, I think that Conrad would have even rebelled even if Horus didn't have his little coup, he would have rebelled no matter what, because Conrad was more content being on his planet, being the Night Haunter, than he was being the Primarch of the Night Lords.
That makes sense.
So, I mean, it's the same with Angron. He would have done the exact same thing.
all right, I think Angron hated the Emperor from the get-go.
Yeah, but Angron's got the most tragic story, in my opinion.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll get to that. I'm sorry for distracting things. Once again, Peanut the squirrel.
Squirrel! Anyways. God, that is so freaking loud.
All right, so Thramis Crusade is going crazy, right? And the Lion cannot, land a death blow because the Conrad's always 2 steps ahead of him.
Yeah.
So make no mistake, the Lion hates Xenos. He hates anything dealing with Xenos. He hates Xenos technology. But he actually had, in order to get a one-up on Conrad, he had to use some Xenos technology. I forgot what it was called, but they were, I don't know if it was a part of the Pylos stuff or anything like that, but they were able to teleport the entire fleet once they got a location on Conrad's fleet and essentially break their back. And dude, they annihilate the Night Lords. Essentially had to scatter the entire everything. But
had to scatter like rats.
Yep, but they were able to get away. Most of them did get away, but Conrad was still recovering from his wounds from that combat that I had told you guys about earlier, where he got stabbed in the back by Corswain.
Right.
And he was in a stasis, healing and stuff. They didn't even know if he was going to live. And then Savitar kind of used his latent psychic abilities to awaken him. And freaking Conrad decides to just cowabunga and just teleport onto the Invincible Reason, the Gloriana flagship of the Dark Angels, and go toe to toe with the Dark Angels again on their own ship. Jago gets captured because he has a psyker seizure and just passes out in the middle of the combat after he straight up surfs a starfighter onto the Invincible Reason. It was one of the coolest scenes in Horus Heresy history. And but Conrad doesn't get captured. He starts doing his Night Haunter shit all over the Invincible Reason, murdering people, and they can't find him. Like the Lion has been trying to hunt him down
2 years or something. Yeah, he's like in the guts and stuff. It's almost like a version of the movie Alien. I mean, it's creepy the way it's described, but very cool.
Yeah, it's freaking crazy. And this is going to lead us into Imperium Secundus. Imperium Secundus was established by Sanguinius and what's his name, Rabute Gilliman on Macragge, because they had no idea. They were completely cut off from the entire western part of the Milky Way galaxy from the Rune Storm. So they're like, oh, we don't even know this happened. So just in case the Emperor's dead and the Imperium's dead, we're gonna set up a failsafe called Imperium Secundus, and we're gonna base it in Macragge, or in the Ultramar sector. And
because weren't they cut off by the big warp storm that had been released?
Yes,
from Terra?
that was called the Rune Storm.
Yeah,
which was did you guys read No Fear?
No.
Fantastic book. I highly recommend it. It's freaking awesome. Freaking word bearers go ham on the Ultramarines. It's great. But Dantiok of the Iron Warriors, who defected from the Iron Warriors, saying, I'm not with you guys no more. He employs himself to Rabute, and they activate one of the I think it was a Pylos. Does that sound correct?
The Pharaoh speaking.
Pharaoh speaking. Thank you.
Yeah, the Pharaoh's device.
Yep, he activates the Pharaoh, which worked as like a mini Astronomicon just for their part of the world, and the Lion sees it, and he goes towards it and ends up in Ultramar. And
fights with his brothers over the policies and commands for a couple days.
I mean, he was going to kill Rabute because he thought he was starting up a mini empire, essentially.
Yeah, but he eventually bought into it and saw it's good to have a failsafe. Because Rabute is always about having a secondary and tertiary plan for everything.
Efficiency over. What's the word? The word is the word. Forgetting the word. Continue.
Yeah, but there's that really that GW piece of artwork where you've got it's the proclamation of Imperial Secundus, and you've got Rabute, and he's holding up Lionel's hand and like cheering, and Lionel just looks depressed right there.
Yeah, he's like, oh god damn it.
Yeah,
I can't believe I'm doing this.
It really tells a story there that's very interesting. And the Pharos beacon is really important here. A little bit of trivia: Pharos means lighthouse, and I believe we talked about the Belisarius Call book a while back, and how Belisarius Call believes there are other Pharos devices out there.
Yes, well,
he's got a map of them, to them.
And that's why Acadia was so important, because it had a Pharos device on it.
Right.
And what's his name? Oh God, the Necron dude, the Infinite.
Oh, Trazen.
Trazen was trying to reactivate him too, to try to close the Great Rift.
Right.
But
because
they were too late.
Yeah. But that would be a huge game changer if they were to activate all the Pharos beacons, because it'd make warp travel so much safer for everyone.
Yeah, and probably draw in a whole bunch more Tyranids from elsewhere in the universe.
Right. Or confuse the heck out of them. I mean, there's a lot of different things that could happen. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and it's when they activated that Pharos beacon that they think that the Tyranids were drawn to.
Was it when it was activated or when it was blew up? Because
yes,
there's a difference there.
Yeah.
Well, it's believed that they were there before that happened. They mentioned in one of the King books.
Yeah. We'll see if they elaborate on that. But anyway, back to Secundus.
Another squirrel. My bad.
Oh, we're good. I think that's what makes our show so good, is we have so many tidbits we can go into. But we always go back to the original topic.
Yes.
All right. So, Imperium Secundus, where
guys,
yeah.
May we take a pause?
Pause.
Cool. I'll be right back.
Okay. So he paused. Is this where you get to make fun of him? To tell a story. Absolutely. Yeah. I that Son of the Forest, I pulled that up on Amazon. I've got that held up now because it just sounds like a really well done book. I don't know what else I've read by Mike Brooks, but
oh, dude, Mike Brooks is so good.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
I've been reading Brothers of the Snake. Have you read that one?
About the Silver Snakes?
No, it's the Iron. What is it? Maybe it's a Silver Snakes. It's Dan Abnett, Iron Snake, something like that. It's a Dan Abnett.
Yeah, I think I read it.
Oh my gosh, it is so good.
Dan Abnett is king.
Yeah.
He writes some really good books.
Yeah, the Iron Snakes. I love the world that they created. This sort of pseudo-Grecian culture from Ithaca, with the fishermen and stuff like that. But in the Brothers of the Snake, this whole sub-context of the story, because it's this, the group of the Space Marines, and they're interacting with the Beate.
I'm back.
Oh my gosh, what is? Thank you.
Welcome
Sorry.
back.
But I just need to finish up this thought. It it's this sub story of how these space marines who have a very non spiritual view of the emperor, and they're dealing with this imperial saint who has real powers, and they don't understand it, and how they try and come to grips with it is such an interesting subplot that is really cool to explore.
Well, that they go into that exact same plot point comes into light in the Godblight books, the Plague Wars books, when Rabute literally sees a miracle happen, and Rabute's like, the Emperor's not a god, no way,
Right.
and he actually sees it, and then Rabute has an existential crisis at the end of the book.
Sounds like a word bearer's day in any time.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
And then so, thank you for listening to me.
You got it. All right, let's get back into it.
Where are we at? We're going into the Horus Terror, seeing how they're going to the Throne World Terra.
Yeah, so Imperium Secundus happens, and then they're able to get a message from Terra that their Emperor's still alive, and they're defending it. They're defending the Soul Sector, but they can't get through the Rune Storm.
Mm-hmm.
So the Lion starts. Sanguinius is able to break through, and the Lion starts marching around, destroying all the homeworlds of all the traitor legions. And then the Runestorm lightens up, and he starts hauling ass for Terra, and he was able to get a small detachment through the Runestorm led by Corswain, and they were able to make it to Terra. And they actually took back the Astronomicon from the Traitor Legions, and were able to hold it long enough to activate it, and that was able to lead Rabute back to Terra.
I have a question now.
Go ahead.
Did any of the incoming legions get trouble from Mars going to Terra?
They probably came from different directions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and remember, Mars was fighting its internal stuff too.
Yeah, they were in a huge civil war on Mars.
Yes, but there's still a pretty large foothold of chaos and legionnaires and all that. I'm just curious if they had a fleet in orbit cause trouble to the converging fleets.
I have no idea, but it makes sense because we do know that the traitors had control of all the major ports on Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the loyalists had pretty much gone underground.
Yep.
So it's possible. It's and feasible. But it was pretty crazy how that scene is so badass. We got to talk about it. When Corswain comes in with his 20,000 Dark Angels Legionnaires, they use the Emperor's flagship as a feint and essentially kamikazed the Emperor's flagship into the traitors as a feint, and the rest of the Dark Angels that were able to land went straight to the Astronomicon and took it back, and then were fighting off what are they called? Death Guard pretty much the entire time since they landed. They were able to activate the Astronomicon. It was amazing. It's an amazing plot in the Siege of Terra.
Oh, so did they fight the warped Death Guard?
Yes, they were warped at this point.
Ooh.
They were nasty at this point. And Typhus was pissed.
When is he never pissed?
He's grumpy. You know, he probably...
He's not supposed to be pissed. He follows Nurgle now.
Yeah, but he's got like a really bad case of the crabs. It's just never let up.
Yeah. More than that.
Yeah, here's another quick tangent. So the Rune Storm, you've got the Rune Storm, and that was created through a massive ceremony. And then later on, you've got the Cicatrix Maledictum. Is there significant overlap in the space that those two covered? So, for example, did the Rune Storm weaken the fabric of the Materium so that it was, or was that, area already weakened, so it made the Cicatrix Maledictum easier?
I don't know. I think
follow that line.
The Emperor pretty much patched it.
Okay.
After the defeat of Horus.
All right. Was it a good repair, or was it a duct tape repair?
Have you read the last 3 books?
No, not yet.
Okay. You need to, because it really gets into how the warp and real space started converging right on the Imperial Palace. It was bonkers, dude. It was absolutely bonkers. Like, it was absolutely nuts, and it was fascinating to read, and nothing made sense. Like, people were literally running through walls, and they had no idea where they were.
I like that story you told us where the Night Lord was like, "I'm doing all this stuff. I got in the palace. I'm the best." Then through the wall, what came through the wall again?
A whole pack of world eaters.
Yeah.
and then he just he kind of puts his hands up and he's like, "What the fuck?"
Right.
Because that is an achievement if you can break in.
Yeah, I just have that image in my head of the Night Lord coming through the wall. He's like, "I am such the best. I am so great and awesome." And in the distance, you hear faint screaming, and it progressively gets louder as the world eaters go through the wall.
Just run past him. Death to the false emperor. He's just going like, "What the fuck?"
Exactly.
Yeah, well,
that was Lucorifus. Lucorifus was like a big player in the Night Lord's omnibus.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about it. He's like, I was the first one on. And he talks about it in the Night Lord's omnibus. I was the first one on the walls of the Imperial Palace.
Mm-hmm.
And Dan Abnett does it full circle, going back to the story in the Siege of Terra books. It was absolutely hilarious.
That's awesome.
He was like, well, fuck. Like, put his hands up. I'm done.
Yeah, he just turns around and leaves. And it's a good thing that there was like a whole pack of angry Marines there to hold off those world eaters. Because they're the only ones who can stand up to the world eaters after all.
Yeah.
So
yeah, so that was the Siege of Terra. We all know how Siege of Terra ended. Freaking Biggie ends up on the Golden Throne permanently as a living battery. But Lionel does eventually make it after Rabute, and they do clean up. They do the Great Scouring, and then we have to get back to Caliban, and this does not go well. As soon as he enters the... All right, someone else take the reins. I've been talking too long.
So, remember when I mentioned that one guy earlier?
Luther.
That one guy who did that one thing that one time. Yeah.
The very, like, brewing Luther, unhappy with his posting.
Yeah. Pouting, petulant.
Yes.
Petulance is the fertile ground of chaos, we have learned.
And
yes, and chaos did add on to that. So, after all that business, you think the Lion would just chill and relax, try and rebuild for a minute so we can take on more heretics? But nope, doesn't work for him. Luther convinced all the trainees that he betrayed the Imperium. So, who wants to take a guess what happens?
Let's see. So all the trainees are dumb because young people are dumb and listen to them, and it starts causing problems. And Lionel comes back in order to pick up his troops because he needs the troops. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go back and I'm going to get my buddies. And I bet Luther, Luther would really like to come hang out and help in this. He'd like to go smack some people around. He'd like to get off planet and go have some fun for a while. And instead, he gets back home and he says, hey guys, I'm home. And Caliban responds with, what? What?
We're going to sit there and shoot at him.
That's right. They decide to shoot at him.
Yep.
Yep.
And then he freaking destroys Caliban.
He assumed that the traitors took over his planet while he was gone. And just straight goes for it. And it isn't until they're all on the ground that they realize it's a civil war.
Yep. And what we find out in The Lion, Son of the Forest is Caliban fired first.
Yes.
And about 90%, if not more, had no clue that the inner circle of Luther had all turned to chaos. It was a very select few.
So it's kind of true, but a few of the trainees were tainted by chaos too. The trusted ones. So while they're all fighting, it led to a point where they blew up Caliban.
Yep. And during the explosion at Caliban, the warp screwery of Caliban kind of teleported a bunch of Ultramarines, or not Ultramarines, a bunch of Dark Angels from both sides all over the place in different spaces of time.
And the planet.
Yeah. And, well, most of the planet, the planet was essentially destroyed, but there's, in the Lion, Son of the Forest, there's like a shadow, for lack of a better term, like a shadow Caliban that allows the lion to, what he call, it's his new power. He's able to forest walk, and he can almost
well, don't spoil it for Pius.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, spoil it. You're not going to break my heart.
Yeah, he was able to. Yeah, but anyway, it teleports people all over, and a lion vanishes. A whole bunch of people vanish, and we get to where we are now with the Dark Angels, and that's them trying to cover up the fact that a big portion of the Legion had turned to chaos, and they're trying to hunt them all down. They will even stop a campaign in the middle of action, leave their buddies hanging, their fellow chapters hanging in the middle of a campaign to go pursue a rumor that there could be what they call a fallen Dark Angel in the vicinity.
Yep. I'll just piss right off somewhere else and go chase down a fallen.
There are so many examples. Here's one. Siege of
Yeah.
Rax.
Yep.
Oh God.
It's interesting, this tactic of scattering the fallen all over time and space. It reminds me of the way that the Primarchs were scattered as
A little
well.
bit. Minus the time and space part, the time part.
Right. Well, things get better or whatever over time, so it happens. And I'm hoping, I know that we're going to continue this conversation in the future, but I'm really hoping that we can dive into Cypher and how he fits into all of this as well.
Oh, I've read
Or
that.
who he even is.
I've read that book twice, man.
He was around in the beginning, right? Even during the Crusade, right?
He was at the Astronomicon during the Siege of Terra. He was helping defend it. Yeah, well, Cypher is not a person; it's a title.
Right.
Okay,
right,
that makes sense.
So there's been multiple ciphers throughout the last 10,000 years.
It's thought to be
Right.
3 or 4 of them that have been, right?
Yeah, in who knows? That's why so many people are like, "Oh, Cypher's freaking Alfarius," and
Omegon. He's a Alpha Legionnaire in the Dark Angels.
yeah.
Oh my God, he could be.
Yeah, I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, same here.
Cypher is so interesting to me, or the character or the title or whatever. First of all, because Cypher means key, and I think that's something that we can't forget. But also this understanding that it's a wonderful example of independence of thought amongst the Space Marines that often gets lost in this whole, ho, brother, we're all the same sort of thing. And it's like, this is a great example of Space Marines that are capable of going in very different directions. And I always find those very, very interesting.
Yeah, and Cypher is such an enigma to me because in 1 second he's actually helping the Imperium, and the next second he's absolutely screwing shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
So that's like, it's very Alpha Legion-esque. So I think that's why a lot of people cling on to that theory. But yeah, but that's where we are with the Dark Angels.
Maybe Cypher and Alfarius and them are actually working with the King in Yellow.
Maybe we were before you guys jumped on. Geronimo and I were actually talking about that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But for another
gentlemen, it is 8:00. I gotta wake up super early.
Yeah, I do too.
What a great conversation. I've missed this. We need to do this more often.
Yep. No kidding.
It's been crazy the last couple months.
Mhm.
This was 2 months in between recordings, 2.5 months.
Almost.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
So,
anyway,
all right, brothers.
Any closing thoughts?
Emotional damage.
Son of a gun, that is so loud.
I turned down my
So loud
volume
in my
a long time
ear.
ago.
I need to figure out how to turn that sound down.
I just turned down
That's
my
awesome.
entire volume, and it's been fine. My volume's at halfway.
So make a long story short, the Angels planet broke. They're scattered. Fallen are gone. They're hunting Fallen. They got the rock. And then they got the what are they called again? Watchers.
Yeah, the Watcher in the Dark.
Yes, the Watcher in the Dark.
And they still
Jawas.
have their... They look like Jawas.
Yeah.
But They still are one of the last legions that still have their flagship.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Invincible Reason still exists.
Yep.
And then there's one little thing I wanted to mention. So,
What's that?
so while Horus had all the legions he was worried about scattered about in the most dangerous parts, war zones far away, he also kept the best gear, newer gear for the traitor legions.
Yep.
Yep.
What a turd basket.
So the entire time they were fighting with this unsuperior equipment, outdated equipment.
Oh, and they even tricked the Lion into giving the Iron Warriors some advanced technology that only the Dark Angels had.
Right. That stuff. Baltimore went over those.
Yeah.
Suspects?
Something. It's like an armored advanced vehicle.
Yeah, they gave I thought they gave them not just that, they gave them some advanced siege equipment that they actually used on Terra.
Yep.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Poor Lion. So gullible sometimes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
If you want an example,
Trusting.
read Alfarius.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, gents. This was fun. I will talk to you guys tomorrow.
All right.
With that, let's end this. Bye.
Bye.
I am Alfarius.
And this is very much so a lie.